Liv, I want to say a massive thank you for agreeing to do this. For anyone listening, like Liv's a really good friend of mine, and I literally remember the first day I met Liv, we were in a car chatting, and I remember like walking away from the conversation being like, Liv is like so much wiser beyond her years. She has such like an incredible kind of like outlook on life. And like last summer, she did some solo traveling, and I'm really genuinely really interested to like obviously learn a bit more about you, but understand like how you got the confidence to go and solo travel by yourself and how you got into that. So I want to start this conversation off by just asking you how you're doing. Like, how are you today? How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. Thanks for letting me come on. No,
No,
I've had quite an interesting summer, and I was very glad when you asked me to do this because I've got quite a lot of advice and sort of, you know, I quite like talking about my solo travels and how it's helped me develop. And yeah, no, I can remember our first conversation, us talking about how we were quite outgoing and like
mm,
going places on our own and things like that. So yeah, very, very happy to be on the podcast.
nice. So I want to start from the beginning. Like, in terms of solo traveling, have you always been good in your own company? Is it something you've had to work on, or were you just naturally born with being like so confident that you feel like you could always go out and be by yourself and solo travel? How did that kind of begin for you?
So I'm an only child, so I feel like I was kind of pushed to sort of go and do things on my own. Like, you know, when you go to like playgrounds, I kind of had to go out and be on my own. I'm not saying I didn't have friends because I had lots of friends to do things with, but yeah, I think it was that. And also I really enjoy being on my own. I love other people's company. But yeah, I definitely like, I think it makes you grow as a person,
Mm,
just doing things on your own. But don't get me wrong, it took me a very long time to get the confidence to sort of go out for dinner. I can remember the first time I went out for dinner, I went and sat in Nando's on my own because I'd been shopping and I thought I really fancy something to eat, but how embarrassing. And I sat there and I think ever since then, that was my little turning point of, do you know what? It's all right.
mm.
So yeah, that was how I
No,
got
that's
into it.
I had a similar thing. Like I remember, like I kind of got into like doing solo things like a year and a half ago, and I remember going into a coffee shop the first time, sitting there. Like I spent the whole time looking around me, being like, "Oh, what is everyone else like thinking about me? Like I'm
That's
such."
exactly what I thought. Yeah, I was like, oh my god, they're all staring. They're all out here for dinner with their, other halves or friends, and I'm just here like eating my burger.
Yeah, you kind of overcome that like that feeling. Like when did you get to the point of feeling comfortable enough to be like, "All right, I can sit here by myself and not think about what other people are thinking about me, or just be so
Yeah,
like comfortable being by myself." How did that? When did you get to that point?
I think it was because I realised that when I looked at people, I didn't think, oh, they're there on their own, sort of thing. Or I just sort of looked up to it and thought, oh wow, that they've done something on their own. Or you never know a person's reason to be sat there on their own. Like they really could just be waiting for someone, or someone couldn't have showed up. Like there's so many different reasons, but it was more of I'm not scared. What if people think, oh, that's weird, well then they're never going to tell you, are they? So it would never get back to me that they thought I was a bit stressed. But
Yeah,
no, I think that definitely changed me thinking like, oh, I don't care if someone eats on their own, so why should they?
definitely. And I feel like so many people, and I'm talking for myself here as well. I've looked through this lens, but like look at things through like a lens of like insecurity.
Definitely.
Like they're so like insecure about like, oh, if I did this by myself, I would feel so insecure. So
Mm.
they're projecting that on someone else and looking at sort of like when I feel I'm saying that I've done this as well. Like I'm a massive like guilty culprit. But when I feel like I can't do something and I see someone else doing it, you get that feeling of insecurity and you almost
It's
project
like the
that.
jealousy of like, why can they do it but I can't? Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask you, like, obviously, when you got into solo traveling, you spent the last summer, and I really want to hear a little bit more about your trip last summer and your solo traveling. But like, okay, we're gonna do a kind of subjective kind of look at it. Like, what do you think the girl before going on your solo travel trip this summer and the person you are now? What do you think is the biggest difference, and in what ways do you think you've grown by going solo traveling by yourself?
I think I'm a lot more outspoken and sort of I now, as much as I would talk to anyone before, I'm much more confident in that I will just approach someone and be like, hello, how are you? And if I used to be scared of rejection in a way, people being like, oh, why you're not responding to me correctly. But now I just think, you just got to go and do it. And I really, really enjoyed my trip. So I went on a cruise around Canary Islands, and although I don't speak a word of Spanish, I still managed to navigate my way around on my own. Um, but I think probably the biggest achievement was people's reactions when I told them that I was there on my own.
Mm.
because obviously you have to sit at dinner with people. So the amount of new friends, and not even friends, like older people that I've met, and the stories I've heard and things I've learned from them is completely changed my outlook on life, I reckon.
Really, tell me more. Like, how has it changed your outlook on life? How do you what?
Like
area-
hearing different people's stories and reasons why they're on the boat and opinions, it kind of molds you into how you want to be and how you don't, and how appreciative you are of life, sort of thing. Like, I had the opportunity to go on this holiday on my own, and I didn't just, because part of me thought I would just sit there and sort of black out everyone, just sit in my room, but I really went and did absolutely everything I could. And people were really, people would stop me in the lift and go, "Are you here on your own?" And this is a huge boat. I've never spoken to half these people. And like, we've seen you here on your own. I thought, yeah, I am. And I'm quite happy to say I am.
I feel like the way you sometimes like respond to things, like when someone hits you with that kind of the insecurity inquiry, like if you bring it back with like, yeah, I am, like that confidence in yourself, like how do you think you, for example, in that situation in the elevator where someone asked you that, how do you bring that sense of like comfortableness in yourself and not feel insecure? Like how did you feel strong enough to go like, yeah, I am here by myself and I'm really like proud to be and I'm happy where I'm at? How are you able to do that?
I think I literally just went, yeah, I am. I'm having a really nice time, and then I reverted back to "How's your holiday?" sort of thing. I thought I'll get back to that, and then we had a really nice chat walking out as well. So it's like you just have to flip it around and think, I'm not going to because it did come across quite negative. It was like, oh, you're here on your own. So I thought, well, let me make this bad situation quite good and be like, oh, yeah, I am, but I'm really enjoying my time. How's your holiday?
Yeah.
Sort of thing.
No, so I love that. And I found, I don't know if you can relate the same way, but like when I've spent more time by myself and got a better almost relationship with myself, it's really improved all like the other relationships in my life. Like I don't feel like I'm not emotionally reliant on any of my relationships. Like I'm good with myself and like I happily spend time with myself, but I love hanging out with other people. How do you think when you like obviously went on the solo trip, how did that affect the relationships coming back? Like do you feel like it's improved your friendships in any way, or how do you think it's affected those different things?
Definitely. I think because I was obviously happy before, but coming back and then sort of realising, I don't know, because it was only a 2-week trip, so I can imagine travelling and going away for a longer time would have really changed me even more. But coming back, like I've done a lot more by myself. If my friend can't come, then that's a shame, but I'll still go and do it, sort of thing. And I don't feel bad that I'm doing it on my own or without them.
Yeah.
And my mum noticed that I was much more I'm not grown up because I'm quite mature anyway, I feel. But
for sure.
Yeah, she was like, wow, you've really grown as a person. But then I haven't really seen her much, obviously being at uni. But yeah, I think uni and solo, I think at uni you do have to do a lot of things on your own, especially you're not always going to have your friends in your lectures. You just have to go and do it. It's your degree, your life. Sort of the same with traveling. Like I didn't have anyone to go with. People were like, oh, well, I'll come with you. And I'm thinking, but I would like to do it on my own. So that's what I did.
So I think it's so cool. I remember, going back to what we talked about at the start, like the first day we met, I remember literally sitting in the car with you and you're like, oh, I booked like a solo traveling trip. And I remember being like, that's so cool. Like,
I think I'd literally booked it that week as well, because that was in January. Yeah, I'd literally booked it. Yeah.
No, that's so cool. So what we're kind of talking about here, and like to kind of take a step back, we're talking about this idea of like the difference of being lonely and being alone. And I feel like a lot of people are so uncomfortable in their own presence. Like, I've spoken to people, and the idea of like sitting in a room alone by themselves with their own thoughts is so horrible. And loads of people would like they need people around them. And I feel like I'm kind of talking for myself a little bit, but loads of people get in relationships or surround themselves with the wrong kind of people because they like hate the idea of being alone so much. Rather settle for people or friendships or different things in their life, where if they took a step back and went, okay, let me get in my own company, they deserve so much more than the things they're settling for. Like, what do you think? And I'm going back to the main question I'm asking here, but what do you think the main difference is between being lonely and being alone?
So I used to be a massive people pleaser, and I'd just do something to please everyone purely so I wasn't on my own. Like I'd attach myself to people, do everything for them, and then sort of push them away. So then I learnt to kind of step back and think, well, they've got to do the equal. But anyway, so back that's probably shying away. But I think that, well, see, when I'm alone, I never feel lonely because I'm happy in my own company. But sometimes I'm a bit like, oh, if it's a down day or weather's not very great, it does affect your mood. But I try and stay busy. Definitely, I do. Like every day, I kind of write a checklist of what I've got to do because then it actually makes me do it. I've started journaling as well. So first thing in the morning, that's what I do. I really enjoy that. It just gets you up and awake. And just talk to people. Just keep in contact with the ones you love, and then do activities, things to keep you busy.
No, I love that. I think for myself and like going a little bit deeper, I think like I went through a point this year where I got so good in my own company, but I think lots of that was like a deflective mechanism of like, I don't know if you've had this, but like when you get good in your company, but you're really scared to get hurt by people or like to put yourself in situations, like I feel like you can get yourself in quite a comfortable bubble and it's like putting yourself out there. Have you found that at other points of like potentially meeting like new friends or like different things in your life? Like, have you ever felt like, oh, this is quite hard? I know I'm good by myself. This is a little bit harder to try and replant myself back into friendships or different things like that. Have you ever kind of gone through something like that?
No, that was definitely me at the start of the year. I kind of pushed everyone away, became very happy in my own sort of social bubble, and then kind of struggled to get back out there because I was like very nervous as to how people would react and meeting new people. But especially because, well, going back to surf club as we both love, I sort of had joined at the start of last year and then found my own friends and thought, oh, well, I can't really go back now. But then in January, I started going back again, and I just thought I've got to keep going at it. And I'm so glad I did because look where we are now.
I think I had a similar thing where like I was back on my like placement year last year, so I was living back at home. And I got at a point where like I basically was forced into a situation where I didn't have many mates back at home. So I had to get my own company. I literally spent all my time in like coffee shops, journaling, reading books,
but at least you stayed in that mindset rather than shutting yourself away in a room, which is what I always, even when I was, trying to stick to myself, I still tried to push myself because I didn't want to go back into a hole where I just sat in my room, did nothing.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I feel like lots of what we're talking about here, whether it be your solo traveling, all these different things, it's pushing yourself out of your comfort zone. And like even when it feels more comfortable, for example, to stay in your room the whole day, like taking that small thing. And it's like, I know me a few years ago, the idea of even going to a coffee shop by myself would have been like, it would have felt the idea of walking a half marathon. And now it feels like walking a 5-minute walk, like it's become smaller.
No, definitely.
What's your mentality for pushing yourself out of your comfort zone? Whether it may be like reaching out to a friend when you feel kind of closer and happier or like more comfortable staying by yourself, or doing something as big as going solo traveling. How do you push yourself out of your comfort zone in that way?
Yeah, see, now I've got to find something that pushes me even further. I've done the solo traveling, but even on a day-to-day basis, there is little things that you think, oh, I'm a bit nervous to do that, or but once you've done it, the accomplishment that you feel, even if it's really small little things, you have to like kind of say well done to yourself. You have to reward yourself for the things you didn't want to do, no matter how small, even if it's literally getting up, having a shower. Do you know what I mean? It's silly things like that you really need to, life's tough. It is really, really challenging. And you've just got to take each day as it comes and push yourself with absolutely everything. I'd say currently, I don't know what I'm trying to, probably getting back into uni after summer, because I found summer quite hard. I've got friends at home, but we were all sort of working. And then it's trying to get back into the swing of it and then getting back into groups of friends and not sure how, new people are coming in, and it's things like that. It's really quite tough, but it's not, but it is sort of thing.
Definitely. I feel like change is a huge thing. It's like, I even know, with, like, for example, with like surf club we're both in, it's like, that's going to be a massive change. Got new people coming in. And it's always weird when you like, I don't know, I feel like life is like seasons. Like you go through different seasons and everything changes. And it's like you can never just rely on like I kept on thinking like, oh, when I reach this one point, it's going to be like almost a flat line of like, this is what life is going to be like now.
Yeah.
Like, especially this year and even the last couple of months, I've realized like everything's always changing. Like you're never going to get to a point where everything, well, one, you have everything figured out, but also like life is just going to keep going in the exact same way. How are you doing? And this is, I guess, it's still along the same lines of like what we're talking about with getting out of your comfort zone. But how have you dealt with like the changes you're going through at the moment? Is there any ways that you're feeling it's helping you get through that, or with the changes at university? Is there anything really helping you? Or
I think stick to a routine. Try and have a focus or a routine. So sort of like set wake up times. Try and get out the house. So go for walks, because I've moved into a new area. So going for walks, having a look around. But like I said, I'm doing that with my new housemates or on my own. It's like a mix of, and some days you do just want to be on your own. Sometimes I feel I just want to shut everyone out.
yeah.
But I'm excited to get back into uni, see how the routine will help meet new people.
So you mentioned earlier, and I want to pick up on this a little bit. You said you were like a little bit of a people pleaser, and I definitely, like, me a few years ago was like the biggest, like, you would have met me and be like, oh my god, you're the biggest people pleaser I've ever met.
Yeah.
Like, so bad. But how have you kind of like, how do you work on the style of communication to be able to tell people like when you need, basically, how do you communicate your needs, or when you have those days where you're like, I need a day to myself? Like, how have you been able to communicate that to the people around you and kind of set boundaries, or just become less of a people pleaser yourself?
Yeah. See, I kind of noticed I was a people pleaser because I was doing everything for everyone and not getting as much back. So then I kind of worked out, especially coming to uni, it kind of highlights who your friends are and who they're not. As much as you've got acquaintances and things, I kind of figured out who would be best and suit me most. So like a lot of my close friends, everyone has down days. So I'll just be like, look, I'm not really feeling it today. And they'll be like, that's perfectly fine. We'll do this another day. So they're very understanding in that respect. So I'm quite lucky. And I totally get it if someone else doesn't want to do things. But yeah, I would say I'm still a people pleaser, because I will, and I do get massive fear of missing out. So I feel like I have to please everyone and go to all these different events, and then I over cram my week, and then I'm absolutely shattered at the end of it.
Yeah.
Tends to be. But I have definitely got a lot better at focusing on the people that focus on me. Like, I just prioritize who I want to see. Sounds really harsh, but in some days in life you have to just be selfish and think, well, they're not being very nice to me, or they're not treating me with respect, so why should I give them my time?
No, I love that. Like, I used to think, like, whether it be like romantic relationships or friendships or anything like that, I used to think things were like almost like 50-50. And I think a big shift that I've seen now is like it's almost like 100-100 of like you do the best you can to a friendship, and you meet that person with like if they're giving the best they can to the friendship as well. But it's like I've definitely seen like it's like when you not like over invest, because that's not the right word to say it, but when you're putting in the effort to check in on people or make an effort on that friendship, and your friend is meeting you at say 10% and you're given like a good like 100%. I think it's time to like review the friendships, and it's like, is this like really fulfilling me? Have you? And we don't have to go too deep on this, but have you reached any points where you kind of like figured out the kind of people you want in your life and the people that you don't? And looking forward, like for example, this year meeting more people, how do you kind of know the people you want to have in your life, and how do you know people who potentially may not align with the kind of life you're trying to live or the person you're trying to become?
Yeah, no, I think the start of the year, I sort of realised who in my life that I went through friendships and a breakup, and it was a bit like, okay, let's see who actually is here for me. And then I stopped being a people pleaser, because I was like, I've just pushed someone away that I thought really liked me, but perhaps I was overkilling it, sort of thing. And I can see that with friendships as well. I think maybe I did, do a lot for them and sort things out, but then that's because I like to take I'll book it and I'll do this and I'll plan this, because I like everything. I like to have a structure. I want to know exactly what I'm doing and when I'm doing it. And if someone forgets to book it, I'd rather know, sort of thing. But no, I think this year I've definitely realised, and the type of people I want to be around is sort of people that add something to my life, match my energy, don't make me feel upset. Don't, you have to click with the people. Everyone from surf, honestly, they are the best people in the world. Everyone is just so carefree and fun. And then a lot of my friends that I've met at uni are just exactly the same. So it really is just, I feel like with uni, you can block out. If you don't want to talk to someone, you can just ignore them. you can just remove yourself from the situation. And whereas at home and school, it's obviously uni's a lot different. So
Yeah.
I've just been working on adapting to that.
No, definitely. And like you're obviously included in this group with like surfing people, but it's like I feel the people I've got in my life right now are people who I love it when you can act so like weird and just be like your most authentic self.
Yeah.
Not have to tell what anyone else thinks, you can just joke around. But I also love it when you've got those friendships if you're having a bad day, you can turn
still talk to them. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like you can laugh your head off with someone, you can act so weird, you can like joke about stuff, but at the same time if you're having a bad moment, you can turn to the same person and say, hey, I'm struggling, is it cool if we just have a chat or go for a walk? And it's nice having those people who will meet you on both different kind of levels and will like meet you where you are and like how you're feeling and different things. So I think that's so important.
Yeah, definitely.
Honestly, I think you were like one of the most like, and I'm just saying this genuinely, you're one of the most like introspective people I think I've met. Like, I remember but I remember meeting you and being like, how self-aware you are. It's like I really want to get to that level of how like self-aware I am. And I think a couple of things you said there when you were talking, it's like it's not necessary that you have everything figured out, and I think no one does.
No,
but it's how self-aware you are of like, oh, this is something I haven't 100% figured out yet, but I'm still working on it. I've got an idea of it, and then that's so important. Like there is, and I struggle with this sometimes, the sense of ego to prove that you're perfect or you have everything figured out. And I really just genuinely believe like no one does. So I think that's really cool. Have you always kind of felt that way? Have you been okay with like being vulnerable or like times where you haven't had everything figured out? Are you okay kind of expressing that? Is that something you've always had? Or
yeah, I think it's because my mum's very much so, she doesn't even know what she wants to do in her life, and she's obviously a lot older than me, been through a lot of jobs, and she's still, taking each day as it comes. So I feel like in life you never really particularly reach, like, you obviously are happy, but you have to just keep working on things, and if things change, I don't have a plan of what I want to do. It's just whatever comes to me.
Life's an adventure. Like it's like if it was
exactly, it's fun. I like it.
If it was so regimented and there was like a tick list of stuff by certain ages, like you wouldn't enjoy it. And I feel like there is a pressure of that sometimes, but to take a step back and be like, I may not have it all figured out yet, and that's fine. I may not always have it figured out, but let's just enjoy where we're at. Let's enjoy this process, and let's enjoy the process of figuring out kind of thing.
No, definitely. I feel like you're always growing as well. Everyone always grows, even from little things you wouldn't realise. Like in a year ago, there's no way that I would have been sat on this podcast.
Yeah.
I would not have had the confidence. I mean, I said yes straight away. I was like, absolutely, I will do that. I was so privileged to be asked. But I just think in a year's time, I want to look back and think, wow, look at how much we've all changed again.
Yeah, no, for sure. And so I wanted to ask you, and we're kind of talking about it here, this idea of your outlook on life. And I think you have such an interesting outlook on life. Is there a quote or a philosophy that you try and deliberately live your life by? Is there anything you go off or?
Very, very cliche, but I'd say definitely life's too short and live every day as it comes, because you never know what's around the corner, whether it be a new job or certain life events. You just have to enjoy every moment. I mean, don't get me wrong, I waste days here and there, but I just try and pack days with things that I want to do that improve my quality of life and just things like that.
What kind of things at the moment are you most grateful for in your life? You obviously mentioned those things in your day. Right now, I'm talking to you right now on this specific day. What things are you most grateful for, and what's kind of making you happy right now at this point in
time? I'd definitely say being back with my friends, coming back after the summer. So I'm definitely appreciative of them. The gym. I've been to the gym a lot, and I think the gym is brilliant for mental health. And just after a stressful day, you don't even have to go and do anything too high intensity. You can just stretch. It's really, for me, it's brilliant. And I quite like going on my own as well. I know a lot of people go together, but that's another thing I like doing on my own.
Oh, I love that. So I want to ask you I guess it's a deep question, and you can answer this in terms of your solo travel. It can be any point of your life. When have you felt most happy? And I feel like we don't actually ask that question enough, but when in your life have you been, or maybe in that moment, or when you look back on it now, when do you think for example, when has been the happiest day of your life, or a moment where you just felt so carefree and so kind of empowered by who you are as a person?
I feel like definitely the day I got into university, because I'd been at college for 2 years and I didn't really enjoy my course too much. So I really was just biding the time and trying to work out what to do with my life. And when I got in, I was so happy, and seeing my mum's reaction. And then I think more recently was definitely when I got off the ship, because my mum was so excited to hear all about it and I had so much to say. And she really didn't know which way it was going to go, because the night before I was sort of backing out. I was like, I don't really want to go anymore. What if I don't like it? You know, it's 2 weeks on my own. What if I make no friends? But just seeing how proud she was and how many people she kind of told when we met them in Tesco, sort of thing. She'd be like, "Oh, she's on a solo trip." It just made me feel really, really happy. So definitely those two at the minute.
Genuinely, like, I think that's really inspirational. Like, how you, for example, had those nerves, or there was that feeling of like, do I do this? Do I not do this? And you still went and did it. And
I did really nearly back out.
Really? How did you? I'm really interested here. Like, why did you decide not to back out? Like, what was that part of, like? Because how close, out of 100, how close do you think you were to backing out?
Probably, well, not as much as I wanted to. I knew I couldn't. So it was more of, right, I've got to do this. But if this is the worst 2 weeks of my life, then I'm just going to have to bear with it.
Yeah.
It's only 2 weeks. But me and my mum stayed in a hotel the night before. She drove me down to Southampton, and I was like, "Mum, I don't think I can do this." She was like, "No, you've got it. And I think if she wasn't there and I was there on my own, I probably would have just driven home. But the moment that I stepped on, I knew I'd done the right thing. I knew I was going to have a nice time. And a couple of girls I met on board are coming to stay with me in a couple of weeks. So you do. Yeah. So you really do meet some really incredible people, and they with their families as well. So.
Yeah. I love that. And we've also talked about solo travel. We talked about getting good with yourself, all these different things. But I think at the end of the day, like, we're here with other people, like, and there's so much power in like the friendships and relationships, and this idea of not having to do everything by yourself. And like, I think, don't get me wrong, I'm so proud of myself, like, to be able to go out and to do those things by myself. But I think the fact you kind of went there by yourself and you made so many incredible relationships, and like, your mom was there for you, all these different things in your life. I think that's, like, is that another thing you're like grateful for, like the relationships you built? Like, how have you always had that relationship with your mom? Like, did it take time to build that? Or?
Yeah, so because I've grown up with just me and my mum, we are very, very close. We're more like siblings. But she had to stay home and look after my nan, so she was like, "Just go on this trip.
Yeah,
just book it." But yeah, she was very much so sort of worried and like, because what I really wanted to do was Interrail or travel abroad or go to Australia. And my mum was like, "Look, why don't you give it a little 2-week go first, just to see if you like it?" And she also wanted to know the safety, like cruising's quite safe. And yeah, I just thought it'd be quite a nice adventure.
Sure. All right, the last thing I want to ask you, like we talked about a bit earlier about like getting out of your comfort zone more. What's your next thing? Like, what do you plan to do next? Whether it be solo traveling, or what thing kind of scares you that you want to do as like the next on your bucket list kind of thing?
So the next thing on my bucket list, fingers crossed, I can get a placement in Australia. So that would be quite a big jump. That's the dream. But whether or not I can do it, I don't know. So that would be that, going out there, surfing, getting a job.
I could so see you in Australia. Like, I think you'd see Australia really well.
Yeah, I really, really hope so. Some of my dad's family live out there as well, so it'd be like I've never met them, but there'll be someone there if everything goes wrong.
For sure.
But yeah, watch this space. Might be in Australia this time next year.
Yeah. So I wanted to, on the podcast, I have this thing every week where I ask the guests their tip of the week. And obviously you've talked about so many, like, personally and on the podcast, you've given such great advice. And I wanted to ask you, what would be your tip of the week for anyone listening?
I think we've spoken about this a lot in the podcast, but it is definitely surrounding yourself with the right people who are deserving of you. And yeah, it's definitely, life is too short to spend it with the wrong people.
Definitely. I think that's so powerful. Liv, thank you so much for coming on. I genuinely really
appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
I love chatting to you. It's always a good time.